Police officers here in Cleveland need to just look across Lake Erie to the city of Detroit for answers as to what it's like to deal with federal oversight of the department. We traveled to Detroit and found out it's not an easy process, one that's filled with hidden costs, mixed results, and could last up to a decade. It's a familiar scene. The streets look almost the same.
How old is she?
7.
And if you didn't know,
Somebody went out in front of her, so she had to swerve to avoid them.
you might think this is Cleveland. Detroit, Michigan, you might say we're cousins. And this Rust Belt family has been through some tough times. Blight, crime, recession, and now a renaissance. And one thing Cleveland can learn from Detroit?
They grow up being scared of the police.
A city's journey through the winding road of a consent decree.
Yeah, everything's good.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're not so used to seeing you guys up here like that. It was like,
Right?
scared us.
In Detroit, that road has been going 12 long years. And for Detroit Police Sergeant Al Ruiz, the federal oversight has been a major adjustment from the beginning.
Me and my partner are pulling up right as this consent decree first started, and we see people coming out of this door right here. Right. They had broke in. The place was closed. They had broke in, so we start chasing them. And you know, I catch the guy, and I remember him trying to punch me. And I'm sitting there defending myself, and I remember thinking, consent decree, and it made me hesitate. And I swore I would never hesitate again, but I remember that. I remember thinking I was gonna get in trouble for doing my job.
Sergeant Ruiz is also one of Detroit's community policing officers.
Black male, possibly female, braids to the back, like a blonde puffer coat.
We roll up on 2 Detroit police officers looking for a suspect.
Gray sweats today, but he's always like kind of creeping, walking back and forth.
The officers don't know they're on camera. Sergeant Ruiz asks them about the consent decree process.
The Department of Justice being here, and
Oh, did it make it better?
did it make the Detroit Police
I
Department
think it
better?
made it better to an extent. You know, I mean, it did. I mean,
aspects of
yeah,
it.
certain
I-
aspects. Some things got a little too anal, but
Right.
you know, we started to focus on things that weren't the most important, but other situations, yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. And I don't think we felt like that in 2003 when they
No.
first got here, huh?
Well,
You know, we're old salty dogs.
Right.
We don't like change.
All right, guys.
Well, we do get a new water bowl, then we like it.
Right.
Sergeant Ruiz admits federal oversight has had a big impact on many officers on the force, now required to wear body microphones. Training has doubled.
Having to qualify with our weapon every 6 months, as opposed to before it used to be every year. Having to go to training a lot more often, being trained more on culture awareness, being trained more on how to handcuff somebody, being trained more on how to approach people.
But to fully understand this painful, tedious process, we go back to the beginning, a process that nearly derailed several times.
The blue curtain of secrecy is on its way down.
It started in 2003. 17 Detroit police officers arrested on charges of stealing money, planting evidence, and filing false police reports.
The citizens of Detroit will have a police department that is truly a model for the nation.
The Department of Justice charged Detroit police with excessive use of force and unlawful arrests. Many of the same charges leveled against Cleveland police.
It's my job to keep the city safe. I'll do whatever it takes.
But Detroit's Justice Department process became filled with failures. 3 Detroit police chiefs resign amid scandal in just a few years.
And we will not be shamed.
Then Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, convicted on 24 felony counts of corruption, sentenced to 28 years in jail. Detroit's consent decree shattered even further, though, after it was revealed Kilpatrick was having an affair with the person most responsible for overseeing the entire police improvement process. Justice Department Monitor Cheryl Robinson Wood forced to resign in disgrace.
They killed my niece. The police shot her in her face.
But in 2010, the consent decree process hit rock bottom. 7-year-old Ayanna Jones was shot and killed by an officer during a police raid at the Jones home. Shots fired while police were looking for a suspect. The officer charged with involuntary manslaughter. 2 mistrials. All charges dropped. A city divided. 12 hard years. And after all of that,
there are a lot of problems with the culture of the department.
Ron Scott with the Detroit Coalition Against Police Brutality. He says the Detroit Police Department has a long way to go, claiming officers continue to use racial slurs, excessive force, and illegal search and seizure. He says young black citizens are still being unfairly criminalized.
We're getting a number of people being stopped in cars for various reasons, and the police are running up to people saying, "Where are the drugs, where are the guns? Are you a gang?"
Residents like Mario Maldonado, who grew up in Detroit's 4th Precinct, say not enough has changed.
I still get paranoid. You know, I don't feel safer. I get more paranoid when I see the police rolling by like, oh, they're just looking to stop me for something.
Meanwhile, Detroit's Police Commission reports there are still 1,300 citizen complaints about Detroit police per year. And while Detroit Police Chief James Craig reports a reduction in police fatal shootings to just 17 in the past 5 years, Chief Craig admits there's always concern about regression.
The cultural magnetic draw that drives a police department back into the way business has always been done.
How do you prevent that?
Well, one, you got to continue to hold people accountable.
Meanwhile, back on the streets of Detroit, I ask the key question.
Some community leaders say the culture of the Detroit Police Department has not changed enough. How do you answer to that?
I would invite these community leaders to meet us halfway. We in the Detroit Police Department have made a lot of changes.
And Detroit's consent decree has now been lifted. A 1-year transition agreement is now in place. Meanwhile, it's a process that is just getting started here in Cleveland. One of the biggest gaps in training is how officers deal with the mentally ill.